Okay, well, thanks, everybody. My name is Paul Kiesler. I am the co-chair of the Climate Reality Project in New York City. For those of you who came in through Mobilize or through some other way, the Climate Reality Project is an organization that was set up by uh, former Vice President Al Gore back in 2006. We now have over 50,000 members across the United States and across the world. And in New York, we have about 2,000 members. So the New York City chapter has 1,100 members, and we're located across all the boroughs. Um, so one exciting news that I'm going to tease with right now is that we're going to have a training. So the Climate Rally Project training is kind of world famous in the sense that the former Vice President Al Gore will be presenting, and he will also have a cast of very renowned speakers who will also be presenting from all facets of the climate fight. So that training will be happening for 2 days in April 13th and 14th. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to share a link to that training where you can sign up for that training. And we hope to see everybody who's here show up for that training. That would be super. Yep, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to discuss how to get rid of fossil fuels from your life. And for those of you who are looking to make sacrifices for the environment, I'm going to disappoint you, because this journey is about getting better for less and while doing your part to fight climate change. So this is not about sacrifice. What this journey is actually about getting things that are better. So I am now going to kick off, and this chart here just shows the effect of climate change and how clear that they are to us. Here's a non-exhaustive list of all the impacts of climate change, and none of which are inconsequential. And we all know by now that last year was the hottest year on record, and by a far margin, as you can see by that diagram, that's a pretty famous diagram that's going on there. We also know that burning of fossil fuels is the primary cause of climate change. And that's what this presentation is all about. It's about how we can stop burning fossil fuels in our personal lives, in our homes, our transport, and for our electricity. And that accounts for about 42% of all the carbon pollution that's ejected into our atmosphere on an annual basis. And so the goals of this presentation are to show you how to leverage federal, New York, state, and utility incentives to electrify your home and transport, and how to source renewable energy for individuals. This note is sorry, I got distracted by something there. So that's the purpose of this event. And we will be giving you simple guidance on how to plan and prioritize your electrification journey as well. And we'll help you take the first step, all of this today. Just as a note, this presentation does not cover the incentives that are available to the landlords, businesses, and nonprofits. So it is only for individuals. And another note is that we will be sending out, you'll all be able to get a copy of this presentation after the meeting. Actually, the presentation that we'll send out is an even more thorough copy of this presentation with all of the backups and extra materials. So that will be available, and we'll send that out at the end of the presentation. And we will also have a recording of this presentation on our site. So I'm going to start actually with a little bit of a poll here, because this will help us understand how to tailor the rest of the presentation. So we're going to focus it on on how you answer the following questions. So I think Deepa is now going to launch that quiz. So please get in there and put in your answers. We're going to give this a minute. Okay. That's great. So I'm going to start summarizing the results. So it looks like we have an even mix of those who rent, who live in co-ops and condos, and who live in single family homes. Um, that's great. It also makes our job harder tonight because we'll have to talk about everything in those areas. So that's fine. That's great. And then it says here, what type of vehicles do you own? So a lot of people don't own vehicles and don't plan to get one. I want to congratulate all of you. Um, and no one's planning on getting one that doesn't have one. That's great. A few folks do have EVs, and there are a few who own ICE vehicles who would like that can't be plugged in. So yes, so that's great. So we'll cover all the EV incentives as well. And there's a bunch of folks who are signed up for solar or have rooftop. And there's also a bunch of folks who don't have community solar or rooftop. So that's great. So basically the result of this poll is that we're going to present everything in the deck tonight. And I think you can all see those results there. Okay. So this, I'm going to start here. How do I get rid of this? I'm going to start with this very famous page. This page is famous because it was made by my sister, the graphic. So that's the reason why we consider this famous. This shows the 11 ways to be more efficient and less wasteful. So the rest of this presentation is going to be using this kind of arrangement so that we can guide the rest of the presentation. And the 11 things are broken down by the yellow components, which are related to your home, the blue components, which are related to transportation, and the red components, which are related to what kind of electricity that you're getting, whether it's solar or not. So, and we'll start with the home. And it's really important in this journey that we start with weatherizing the home, because as you weatherize your home, you will reduce some of your future investments. This will enable you to reduce the investment in your space heating, for instance, and your solar energy if you plan to get solar. So that's an important note to make. And then the next step is to make sure that you have your electrics in order for the transition. So you can only do this after you find out the answer to the next 4 questions. And that's whether the following 4 pieces of equipment in your home are fossil fuel or are already electric. And these are the 4 pieces of fossil fuel equipment that we find in homes typically. So it would be your space heating, your water heating, clothes drying, and cooking. So those are the 4 pieces of equipment that we want to replace with electric equipment. And then the 5th fossil fuel piece of equipment that people generally own is a vehicle, if they do have a car. So those are what we call the fossil fuel 5. And that's going to be part of the main focus of this presentation, is getting rid of those and replacing them with electric vehicles as your current equipment dies or gets to the end of its life. And then replacing, the rest of the presentation will be focused on replacing the electricity that you get with renewable electricity to fuel those 5 pieces of equipment. So yeah, that's the journey that we're going to describe in this presentation on 1 page. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually we're going to go to repeat a little bit about what I talked about earlier today, which is that, for those of you who want to sacrifice for the environment, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, because every one of these changes really has additional benefits that such as saving money or making your home more comfortable or making your home more healthy. So as an example, weatherization, when you weatherize your house, you save, not only do you save money, but it also turns your home into a nice, comfortable place to live. And you have less drafts, and it's just more fun to be at home. Another example is induction cooking. When you use induction cooking, things boil faster. The unit is more precise. You can't burn you or your children, and you don't give your kids asthma. So these are all extra benefits that you get for this transition. And I think everyone has heard about how great EVs are. They're faster, they're smoother, they're cleaner, they don't have tailpipe emissions, and they're more powerful. And they require less maintenance than gas cars, and they require less gas and less cost for electricity than gas. So all of this is really about, all this transition is really about, getting better things. So that's one point that we really wanted to drive home. And another point is that you'll also save money on this. So most electric machines are more efficient and run cheaper than fossil fuel counterparts. So for instance, the EVs are 40% less expensive to maintain because they don't have as many moving parts. You don't, for instance, have to change the oil and things like that. And you have 60% less expensive fuel on average. That depends obviously on the cost of gas and your cost of electricity, but these are averages, and that's from a Car and Driver report. So that's just one example. Another example is that heat pump water heaters actually last longer than electric or gas water heaters, and they save you around $5,000 over their lifetime in electric bills. So I have, for instance, a heat pump water heater in this, and where I'm sitting right now, and that water heater costs me actually $35 a year to run. That's with the solar electricity. If I didn't have solar, it would be $100 a year to run. So they're really, really efficient. I had a Tesla for 3 years at one point, and the only thing I ever put into it was wiper fluid and air in the tires. And I never went to the repair shop. So that was, 3 years of, a lot of time savings. So these are all, ways that, and this is true for pretty much everything in electrification, but I will note that heat pump space heating, while it's generally cheaper it's always cheaper than if you're replacing oil or propane. It's almost always cheaper. And you can use the calculator, and that's, listed on this slide to confirm that. But sometimes it can be pretty equivalent if you're replacing natural gas that's inexpensive with electricity that's expensive. So that's why we recommend using this this calculator that we have listed here. And I want to note while we're on this page and while I'm making that point, that when we send out this presentation, it'll be in a PDF form, and all of the links will be available. Will be clickable in that PDF. So wherever you see these blue hyperlinks, that will all lead you to more resources. Another thing I want to point out is that while everything is cheaper, and better, is cheaper when you electrify it, or most things are cheaper when you electrify it, if you're to go ahead and get solar, that differential will be even greater, right? So, whereas where I am right now, it's about a 20 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour cost of the utility provided solar electricity. The solar that I get is around 8 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's much less money. So yes, so electrification is not about sacrifice, and it is about saving money. And now what I want to do is I want to go through a one-page summary of all the federal, state, and utility incentives that are available to help you get through this journey. And I'm going to explain how this page works, because it's really an eye chart and it's very difficult. But as I said, you'll get a copy of this in the presentation. So as you go down the list, these are the 11 steps of electrification that I highlighted earlier on the page with the house on it. And then as you go across the presentation, you see in the blue 3 columns, these are federal incentives. And then in the 3 green columns are New York State incentives. And the first 2 federal columns are actually rebates. And so these are 2 programs called the Home Efficiency Program and the HOMES program. These benefits are not yet available, so they should be available later this year. So I won't spend too much time on those, but I will go through a few examples just so that you understand how they will work when they're rolled out by the New York State NYSERDA. And then you have the tax credits in the 3rd column. In the New York columns, it starts with programs, and these are all programs that are available that either offer rebates or free things or low cost things. And so I'll go through those as we go through the presentation. The next column is are rebates that are under the clean heat and other programs. And the last column is all the New York State tax credits. So let me go through just a few examples on this page. So if we look at the weatherization, you can see there will be federal rebates. This is column, I'm going through row 2. you can see that there'll be federal rebates available for low-income individuals and moderate-income individuals. So for this definition, and for the entire column, a low-income individual is someone who's earning less than 80% of the area median income. And a moderate income individual is someone who, or a household, is a household that's earning between 80 and 150% of the area median income. And so, those amounts will be issued later, and you'll be able to see by district, what those mean. But there's quite, the moderate income is quite a generous definition for the federal. It's more generous than the New York version.
Paul, I'm gonna.
So for weatherization, you can see that you'll have. Actually, I can't see it on my screen because I can't see what you guys are seeing. But you see quite a significant amount of credits, 100% up to that amount, in for low-income individuals, and 50% up to the amount indicated there for moderate-income individuals. And then you have a 30% tax credit for
Paul,
anybody. Yes.
If you don't mind pausing for just a minute, I'm not sure which slide you're on, and I think I'm quite far ahead of you. So I'm just going to go back. Okay. Thank you. And just when you go to the next, if you don't mind just saying next.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No problem. Right. So, yes. So I want to put up here so I can see what you're showing. Yeah. Now I can see what your page you're on. Okay. Yeah, so then, so with going further with the weatherization, you can see there's 4 programs under the New York State initiatives. The first are the REAP assessment, control, comfort home, New York Empower, or what's now called Empower Plus, and a central Con Ed special weatherization program. So those programs we're going to go through on the following pages. But yeah, so that would be how this whole model works, how this page works. And so when you go and look at what are your fossil fuel devices in your home, you'll be able to go to this page and run across and see all of the incentives available. For instance, let's just go through the air source heat pumps, which is always a big topic for everybody. And for the air source heat pumps, you can see there's a 100% rebate up to $8,000, right? And if you're low income, 50% up to 8,000, or it would be 4,000. Then you have a 30% tax credit, which can be up to $2,000, and these will be cumulative. And then you can get a clean heat rebate from your utility. And the clean heat rebates are quite significant. So for instance, when I did this in the Central Hudson territory, I got a 31% of the budget was this rebate covered 31% of the cost of it. Had I gotten this 20% tax credit, it would have been another 9% or 7% approximately. And these rebates, had I gotten the full rebates, which weren't available then, the low income rebate would have been another 30%. So net, the total rebates and tax credits that would be available for air source heat pumps in those conditions which I described could be up to 60%. So it's quite significant, these rebates. Yeah, so I think we're going to just move on from there because I think that's clear how this page works. And by the way, I want to highlight for everyone, if you have questions, if you can start throwing them in the chat, that's great, because we'll go through the questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, we're moving to the next page, Beth. And just some quick notes on the federal tax credits and rebates. They're all in effect through 2032, and there are annual limits on the credits for many categories, but the credits reset every year. So like if you took advantage of that 2,000 credit on the air source heat pumps, you could get another 2,000 the following year. You can split projects over more than 1 year to maximize the credits. Now that was a bad example actually, because if you split the air source heat pump credits, you can't really do that kind of project. You can do that project over several years, but then the rebate that you get from your utility will be less because they give you a higher rebate if you do the whole house. So, but you could do something like your water heater 1 year, and then you can go back and do your stove the following year, and so on. There are no limits on the total income tax credits given. So that's, you can, especially when you get to the solar credits, they're quite, and the geothermal, they're quite big, and there's just no limits on those. So that's it on federal tax credits. And as I mentioned, the rebates, we're not sure exactly how those programs will work. We're going to be getting the rules in the coming months. And one last disclaimer that I wanted just to highlight here, that's that all the information in this deck has been thoroughly reviewed. We have a committee of people who actually go through this every month just to review it. However, we're not the IRS, so, and we're not tax accountants. So we do recommend that you get all of these things approved, by your tax accountant before you count on any of these rebates or credits. Okay, so moving to slide 11. This is I'm going to start to go through all the programs. And the first set of programs that we're going to talk about are the weatherization, because it really makes sense to weatherize your home first. It makes the next steps in your journey less expensive. And New York has a lot of great weatherization programs. For those households earning more than 80% of the area median income in your region, so this is a different cutoff, it's 80% of the AMI. If you're making more than that, then you're eligible for the first two programs, residential energy assessment and the comfort home. If you're making less than 80%, you'll be eligible for the Empower Plus. So those, and then the clean heating and cooling heat pump program, we're going to cover in the heat pump section. So right now we're just going to cover the first three of the programs. And the residential energy assessment program, which is on page 12, is a program that, sorry, Beth, you have to back up one, right? Or you're there already. Okay, great. Yeah, so the residential energy assessment program on page 12 is a program which basically gives you a free audit of your house, and they'll come in and they'll look at the causes of drafts, inconsistent temperatures, and things like that. What kind of HVAC systems you have. They'll look at the equipment that's using the most energy, and they'll maybe make some recommendations about unknown issues that make your home less comfortable. And they should also mention any health and safety hazards. So they'll give you a free report with all of this information. And then if we move to the next page, this is the program which helps you implement some of those recommendations that they might give in that free report. And the first level is what's called good. And this, if you just do your seal and insulate your attic and the rim joist, you'll get a $1,000 incentive. And then those levels keep going up for more activities that you do. And it goes up to $4,000 if you also insulate your walls and floors and retrofit all your windows. So that's called the Comfort Home program. And those two programs I just described are available for everyone making more than $80,000. The Empower Plus program is a program that's been redesigned for this year. So for those of you who know about it from the past, this is a new program, the way it's organized. And they've split the program into two chunks. So the first, so if you're what's considered a low income household, which is less than 60% of the AMI, you can get up to $10,000 of projects done. If you're between 60 and 80%, you're considered moderate income. And this is, again, a little different from the federal limits that I talked about earlier. And for that group, you can get 50% of the $10,000 or up to $5,000 in projects done. And the projects that can be done are insulation, air sealing, health and safety, and things like that. And once those are done, you can actually get heat pumps. If you already had those things done in your home, then you could have heat pumps done. And obviously this, I didn't mention it, but this program also includes an energy assessment at the beginning. So you can see the energy levels, the eligibility levels there, depending on your number of people in your household. These are the New York City income limits. So you would be, if you're a one-person household, you'll be in that first row. And if you're making less than about, I think it's 37,000, you'd be low income. If you're making less than 70, 9,000, I can't see the numbers, sorry, they're very small here. Then you would be moderate income if you're between those two. So those are the New York State programs. And then you also have a Con Ed program, which is worth up to another 4,000. And so in order to get that, it's you need to look, you can just check that hyperlink to see if you're eligible for that program and how to go about doing it. So moving to the next page, these are the federal incentives for weatherization. And these tax credits exist today. The credit is for the first column on the left. The credits for up to 30% of these activities here, such as installation and electric panel and wiring. The rebates and the whole house programs are the two programs I referred to earlier on the first page for weatherization that don't exist today. But the scope of those programs, the rebates are primarily for what you can see here is electric panel upgrades and rewiring and some basic weatherization. And then the whole house program, or what is called the homes, would be called the homes program, will be much more focused on activities like weatherization. So those are the federal programs for weatherization. And now I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is heat pumps. So once you have your home nice and tight, and sorry, it's a little cold here, so I'm going to put on my jacket. So yeah, once you have your home nice and tight, then the next best thing is to go after your heat pumps and electrify those. And the heat pumps actually, or heating, space heating, it takes about 50% of the electricity or the energy you use in your home. So this is a really important step. And heat pumps are magical. They actually just move heat. They don't create heat. And therefore, it's more efficient and cheaper. And they move this heat using refrigerants. So let's say, for instance, at 57 degrees outside, a gas furnace can be, in the range in the 90% efficient in creating heat. So they take that energy and they'll turn about 90% of that into heat, while a heat pump can be 300 to 500% efficient. And how does that work? That means they're just moving the heat from outside to inside of your house. So you're creating 3 to 5 times more heat molecules in your house, or sending them outside of your house for the same amount of energy. And so if you don't understand what I just said, don't worry about it. Just know that they're super, super efficient. And they do become less efficient in colder weather. The most modern ones don't suffer as much in terms of how less efficient they get, but they all work. It's just that they'll work a little bit harder. And they work down to minus 17 degrees is what the hyperheat systems that are pretty common in our environment work to. And it hasn't been below minus 17 in anywhere where people live in New York for like a century. So these things are, they're used very heavily in Norway. And so they do work in cold environments. There are different types of heat pumps though. Some transfer heat through the ground and they're called geothermal or ground source. And others transfer the heat using the air, and those are called air source heat pumps. Ground source heat pumps are more efficient because the ground is, always around in the 50s in terms of temperature. So to get that up to 70 or, down to 70 is, pretty easy. Whereas when you're comparing, like trying to get it up to 70 when it's 20 outside, it's a big differential. So the air source heat pumps work a little less efficiently. So having said that, though, geothermal heat pumps cost a lot of money. So that's what you have to weigh off. And we always recommend that you get estimates for both options if you can put geothermal in. Okay, so that's the description of the heat pumps. And now moving on to page 18, I'm going to describe the geothermal heat pump tax incentives. They're very big. The federal rebates or tax credits are 30%, and they're uncapped. In New York State, you get 25% tax credits, but they're capped at $5,000 total. You also get a New York State sales tax exemption. And then you get these rebates from the utilities, which are very significant. So, the net effect of all of these incentives can be 50% of your cost and greater. So, the details are all here. You'll see a lot of blue hyperlinks where you can get, all the information that you need. Air source heat pumps, a bit more common. They have the same 30% tax credit, but it's capped at $2,000. So it's not so big. There are federal rebates that will be coming in, and as I mentioned earlier, they go up to $8,000 for low income or $4,000 for moderate income. Again, it's a New York State tax exemption, and then these clean heat incentives are pretty strong. So, like as I mentioned, this, I got about 30% on my system, and had I been low income, I would have gotten a total of about 60% for the project. So, which makes it very affordable. And then talking about water heating, there's a 30% tax credit capped at $2,000 that exists today. There will be these rebates that are described in the next column. And again, there's an exemption from sales taxes in New York. And then there's utility rebates. So Con Ed and Central Hudson give $1,000 each, for example. So in the example that I have, when I installed mine, I got $1,000 off it cost $1,600. They gave me $1,000 off. So, and then the federal government gave me a $300 tax credit. So the water heater actually cost $300. And then I still had to pay a plumber and electrician to put it in. That cost me $900. So it cost me about $1,200 in total to get the thing installed. And I'm saving about $400 a year. So it's a very quick payback. These are great projects to change your heat pumps, your water heating. And then we're going to talk a little bit about clothes dryers and electric stoves, because these are the other two fossil fuel devices that people have in their homes. So Beth, I'm on page 21. And what's important here is that these don't really take a lot of energy, right? So they account for anywhere from like 3-4% each of your total energy use, whereas space heating takes 50% and water heating is maybe 15%. And then the remainder is all your other appliances like TVs and so on. But these have other reasons why they're really important. And for clothes dryers, if you have a gas dryer, this might be the last thing you have in your house. And so if you can change this to an electric one, you can cut off your gas service and save the monthly fees. So that's important. And then for electric stoves, you have the whole pollution issue that is really is really an important issue for us, because when you think about the way that the gas gets into your electric stove, it's in New York, most of our gas is fracked in Pennsylvania, and that releases cancer-causing chemicals like benzene and arsenic into the drinking water, and then it's piped in a line which leaks along the way, leaks methane along. And then when it gets into our homes, it's also leaking. Even when it's turned off, it's leaking methane into your home. And then when you're burning things, cooking, you're creating nitrous oxides and carbon monoxide in your house, all of which are known to cause cancer, heart disease, lung disease, and asthma. So the reason to get rid of your electric stove is, much more important. It has much more to do with the health impacts than the actual climate impact. So if you can't replace your gas cooktop, please be sure to open all of your windows in your kitchen and run the vent at the highest possible setting to make sure that you get rid of those toxic fumes as fast as possible. But if you can, that's great. If you can replace it, that's great. There's for low-income households, there's an $840 rebate that will be coming. And if you're a renter or someone else who can't quite do that yet because you don't have the authority to do it, you can still buy a cooktop. And I looked on the way up here today, it was about $81 on Amazon. You can get an induction cooktop that you can use, instead of the electric stove that you have. So heat pump clothes dryers are also great. They treat your clothes much more gently. And two big benefits of these are that you only need 120 volts. So you generally can just plug it into a wall outlet. And the other big benefit is that you don't need to have venting to the outside. So the water just condensates and goes down. Either you just take it out out of a tray, or it goes down to where the washing machine water goes down. is emitted. So that can save you a lot of money on installation. And so net, you can actually save a lot of money by getting a heat pump dryer instead of an electric one. And it's, sorry, instead of a gas one. And then, we talked a lot about electrifying things. And so just to pause for a second, we talked about electrifying the space heating, the water heating, and then those two devices in your kitchen and in your clothes dryer. So once that's done, that's usually everything in your house that's a fossil fuel device. And so if you plan that out, you need to find out whether you have the electric supply to your panel, and whether you have enough, your panel is large enough to fit all these new appliances. And so there are some tips. There are some rules about whether you need more service or not. Really, an electrician will have to tell you that. But generally speaking, if you live in a single family home, if you have 150 or more amps, you should be okay. But the way to figure this out is to list all your planned projects, determine the panel size, and then see if you can do all those planned projects. So there's some tips you can also use to reduce the demand on your panel and maybe avoid getting an upgrade of your service or of your panel. So avoiding resistance heating backup for heat pumps, which is available, that will save you a lot of money because, that will save you a lot of space on your panel because that requires a very high amperage. You can get water heaters now that are 120 volts instead of 240. So that'll, you can just plug that into a regular outlet. As I mentioned, same with the clothes dryer. Stoves are coming out with 120 volt stoves that have batteries. And your EV charger, you can actually just plug in your EV charger into a regular outlet if you're planning, if you use it for less than say 30 miles a day. But otherwise you can get a lower amperage, 240 volt. And then you can use power sharing devices. So power sharing devices will let you either charge your EV or cook on your stove. And so you just, when you're cooking, it automatically will turn off your EV charging until you're done cooking. So those are some options. And then what I did personally was I just used sub panels, and that helped solve my problem. So in terms of the home, we're wrapping this up now because we talked about all the devices and how to talk about the weatherization, the devices, and then how to look at your electricity supply. There's other programs, so I just wanted to mention, some of which are pretty significant, like the financing program that NYSERDA offers. Details are there. And there's also demand response programs. So they'll pay you to turn your heat off during during your electricity off during certain periods, like usually during the summer from 4 to 8 p.m., for instance. And there's also utility marketplaces where you can buy things like LED light bulbs for cheap. So all of these programs are listed here, and you can find the links in the handout. And the last thing I want to mention in terms of the home piece is that there are utility partnership. All the utilities partner with a company called Sealed. This company will do the installation and the heat pump installations for you. And so they'll pay for it up front, and then they charge you for that over time. And the idea is that what they charge you should be less than what you save on your electricity. So that's just a program that you might want to look into. And then a topic which comes up frequently is getting the right contractors. And much of this technology is new, and many contractors really have interests or preferences for doing things the old way. And they try to sell what's on the back of their truck. So really it's important to choose your contractor carefully. And we recommend you get 3 quotes on all projects, especially major ones like heat pumps, where you're getting a mechanical engineering recommendation from the suppliers. So that's really important to get 3 quotes. So with that, I'm going to just move to transport. And the rest of this presentation is actually go quite quickly because the home piece was the heaviest and the toughest. So with transport, many of us who live in the city, we know that you're better off just walking places and taking public transport. And we saw in the survey that there's a good chunk of people who don't have vehicles and don't plan to get vehicles. So that's the best option. So to the extent that you can avoid ever getting a vehicle or just getting like a scooter, that's perfect. But if you do need an EV, they are better. And I listed the ways that they're better earlier. So we're just going to go straight into the incentives. And the incentives for new EVs are $7,500, up to $7,500. But there's some requirements to that. So your modified adjusted gross income needs to be lower than these limits that are listed here, which is, for a family is 300,000, or for an individual is 150,000. The price has to be of the vehicle has to be under certain limits, and the domestic content of the battery and so on have to be above certain limits. So you can find like lists of cars that are qualified in the links there, so you don't have to like really know all those facts. You can just look up which cars are qualified for either the $3,750 or the $7,500 tax credit, because you can either get half or all of it. And the other thing that's new this year is you can actually get the credit as a rebate at the dealer. And the way that'll work is you just have to testify that your income is below those limits. And as long as your income was below those limits in the prior year or in the year that you bought the car, you'll get the credit. You'll be able to, the rebate is fine and you'll be able to keep it. If you actually have higher income than that, then when it comes to filing your tax return, you'll have to pay it back. So there's similar laws with EVs, but the limit is just 4,000. The credit is $4,000, or if you take it as a rebate, you can get $4,000. And they have income levels and different rules as well, which are listed here. And then New York also gives incentives, so you can get from $500 to $2,000 off, and these are all as rebates. You'll get that off at the dealership. And so you can see the eligible models at that link. And one example I just wanted to highlight was a friend of mine who actually just drove me in this car today, bought this Bolt for about $28,000 was what it cost her, and she's getting $9,500 back in incentives. So it's going to cost her about $18,000. Very similar to the EV charging. Most utilities have EV charging rates that are generally like from midnight into 8 in the morning. And that's fine. If you have a level 2 charger and you can charge your car usually in a couple hours at night, you have to totally recharge it. It might be 6, 7, or 8 hours. And you can do that in these off-peak times, and the cost is even lower than it is, and you'll save even more than the amounts that we talked about earlier. So those are the EVs, the transport incentives. And then the last thing we want to talk about is solar. And so for those of you who can't get solar because you live in an apartment or your house has trees around it, you can get community solar. And the way community solar works is you sign up to a company that builds a farm of solar that will then send that solar electricity for you and all the other subscribers to your utility. The utility gets those credits, and then they transfer those credits to you. And so basically you're getting real solar electricity from a supplier. And when you pay for that solar electricity, you'll get usually a 10% discount, but anywhere from a 5 to 10% discount. So it's not only is it real renewable solar electricity, it's also cheaper. So it's really, it's a no-brainer. If you don't have solar on your roof right now and you're not in community solar program, we really recommend that this is the first step that you do. We're going to have a breakout room at the end of this meeting. So you'll be able to go into that breakout room and get some help on actually how to do it. But it's pretty simple. All the links are here. Okay, so that's community solar. And then if you do have the option to put solar on your roof, there's residential solar. And there you get a federal tax credit of 30%, which is uncapped. New York State tax credit of 25%, capped at $5,000, and then a NYSERDA New York Sun rebate on the invoice, and that can be quite substantial. So just for giving some examples, when I put in solar at this residence, I got 48% of the cost off. So almost about half of the cost off. And that was when the tax credit was 26%. So now it's a bit higher. It would have been 52%, my total savings. So yes, really easy to get started. What you do is you go to Energy Sage and they'll help you get 3 quotes. And the average payback is 8.7 years. It could be even better in New York because that's the average payback across the country. So in New York, we have a little bit less sun, but we have a lot more rebates and incentives. So if you can do residential solar, it's super. And then for renters, we have a little guide here, and there's a lot of backup in the backup pages in the materials that we'll be sending out. But there's just one thing to note to start off with, which is that if you pay for your electricity in your apartment, you can sign up for community solar. So that's something that you can do. You can also sign up for the time of use rates, which if you manage it well, can also reduce your costs. The other thing you can do is all of the transport incentives, EV incentives, those are all applicable to renters. So, those 2 sections of this presentation, the solar and the transport, you can do as a renter. Some other things you can do as a renter is you can increase your efficiency. So the second block here, by using things like LED light bulbs and replacing a window AC unit when it goes out with a heat pump window unit or inverter AC, which is more efficient, and just generally buying energy efficient appliances and unplugging them where you're not using them and things like that. There's a lot of like I said, a lot of details in the backup. But what's really important to mention is that all of those weatherization programs that we talked about for New York can apply to renters as well. And all you need is your landlord's permission. So it's a bit more complicated. It takes a bit of effort, but those are all available for renters too. And you can also replace this famous fossil fuel 5. So the transport, you can use the incentives, all the incentives that are available to get rid of a fossil fuel car. But you can also do, you're also eligible to replace the stove or dryer, the space heating and the hot water heating in your rental unit. Obviously, that's more complex, right? Because those things will stay with the landlord. So that's not very a smart decision if you're planning on leaving anytime soon. So for the stoves, what you can do is you can put in one of those induction cooktops that we talked about and just use that instead of the gas cooktop. Or you could agree with your landlord, that you're going to make these changes and that you're going to pay her at the end of the month or over some course of time. That's an option as well. Things like heating and hot water are more relevant for the landlord to take care of because they tend to be for a whole building. But again, if you're in a single family home that you're renting out, those are also options that you could talk to the landlord about because he would have or she would have the same savings that we talked about earlier. So that these are good investments for them. Condos and co-ops. For those living in condos or co-ops, you can do all the things I mentioned in the renter's guide on the previous page. You can get community solar if you get an electricity bill. Your co-op also, if they have an electricity bill, they generally do for the common areas, they can get community solar for that as well. You can get all the EV credits. It may be easier for you. I had a condo and I replaced my gas dryer and my gas stove. I just did it with condo approval. I had to get their approval, but it's possible. And but it's difficult to change the space and water heating. So we really recommend that for those of you in condos and co-ops is to join the board of the condo or co-op. And our next month's chapter meeting, which will be February 29th, that will be dedicated to such a journey. We'll have invited a condo board member who began that journey, and he's made a lot of progress in his Queens co-op. And we'll also have a member from the New York City Accelerator here, who's a Climate Rally Project member as well. So that's next month's chapter meeting on February 29th. So for those of you who are interested in that journey, please join us for that meeting. The details will be in our next newsletter. So, so yeah, that's the presentation. And I just wanted to highlight that with all of this information, it's a lot of information. So how best to organize yourself. is a big topic, and we've had this advice on the planning this journey. And we recommend that you start with an assessment, you get this free energy assessment, and then do the actions that are listed in that assessment, like specifically sealing and insulating, all the insulation measures that they recommend. And then the next step is to list all of the fossil fuel equipment that you have in your home and transport. And you can rank them out as to how much remaining life they have. And then you just decide the best, decide the best replacement for each of those up to 5 fossil fuel devices that you own. And so then you'll have a ranking of when they're going to die and how you're going to replace them. And then all you need to do is check your electric panel and address that question. And once that's done, then you just implement the steps that you've already decided on as the time and money allows. But before you get into emergencies. And then if you're not, the last step is if you don't have rooftop solar, you're not in community solar, just get renewable energy, get the community solar today, after this meeting. And if you decide to get rooftop solar later, you can always get out of your community solar with a 90-day notice. So that's how we recommend to plan this journey. And on the next page is a planning worksheet, which will help you do that. So in conclusion, we want to just summarize that, this is not about sacrifice, it's about improving your life. And we hope that we've been able to show you the ways that you can save money in that journey as you replace these pieces of equipment when they're coming to their end of their life cycle. And I think we have another poll actually, where we're going to ask everybody where do you plan to start personally? So the poll is up there, and if everybody on the present, still with us after this almost hour, could highlight what their next step is going to be, that would be great. We'll just give us a minute.
Hey, Paul, thank you for this. Can I share something really quickly while folks are taking the poll, or should I wait to the end?
Yeah, who is that speaking? I'm sorry.
This is Bryson Rose. I'm a
maybe
newbie.
When we're done, yeah,
okay.
That would be great. We're almost done. Okay. So we have 15 answers, and I'm going to just end the poll here so that I can show it to everybody. I learned that I have to push this button to show the results. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of folks are going to be doing the home energy audits, which is super. It's a great first step. And in weatherization and community solar. Hopefully 5 people signed up tonight for the community solar. And that's great. This is great. Great. I really, it's heartwarming to see so much actions that are going to come out of tonight's meeting. And so with that, I just wanted to end the meeting by saying that if you'd like to join the Climate Reality Project, you can do that. And you'll get information on that upcoming meeting on co-ops and condos, for instance. All you have to do is open your camera and take a picture of that QR code, the top QR code there. If you'd like to join that April New York City training, take the snapshot of that bottom QR code. And like I said, you're gonna have a lot of famous people at that meeting. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I'll certainly, and all of us will certainly be there. And then on the next page, if you would like to get this presentation in the PDF form, just take a picture of that QR code, and you'll see you can connect right to that. It'll show up on your phone, and then you can send it by email to yourself or however you want to send it to yourself. So that's it. We're complete now. And so I think we're going to move into the Q&A section, and we can start with Bryson. And I think, Beth, are you going to be leading the Q&A session for us?
I don't believe it was.
Or I can do it.
Okay.
Paul, I've got some questions I've collected from the chat, so I can pass those.
Awesome.
The first question we have is, what is the difference between credits resetting and a credit being uncapped?
Okay, so an uncapped credit. So for instance, an example would be on solar, the federal tax credit is 30%. So if your project cost, a typical project might cost $20,000, you would get $66,000 tax credit. If that project did cost $40,000, you get $12,000. New York State, on the other hand, limits the amount of the 25% tax credit to $5,000. So if you did a $20,000 project, you would get $5,000 tax credit from New York State. If you did that same $40,000 project, you would still just get $5,000 of tax credit from New York State. So that's the difference between a capped and uncapped credit. And Deepa, can you remind me of the first part of the question?
So the question was, what is the difference between credits resetting and
resetting.
Uncapped?
So yeah, so all the federal tax credits, they used to be limited to like a lifetime amount of $2,000, and that's gone. So with the IRA, all of the limits that we talked about in the presentation, they reset. So if you did like a weatherization project in your house 1 year, like you insulated your roof, you could take that $1,200, I think it was $1,200 tax credit that year. If you do your basement the next year, you could take another $1,200, and you could just keep doing that. That's what resetting means.
Great. And the next question, can these rebates, federal plus state, be combined for the same household?
Yeah, so the tax credits, federal tax credits, and the state tax credits and the utility incentives all can be combined. What we're not sure about yet is the federal rebates. We're waiting for the final rules on how those programs will work. So I don't know the answer to that specific question about the rebates. No one does yet.
The next question is, we installed our geothermal in 2023 with some NYSERDA help, but now wonder if we acted too soon. So are the rebates retroactive to 2023?
That's a good question. You didn't act too soon because you helped the transition. You're cutting greenhouse gases. But I don't know the answer to that question, and we can get back to you with the answer to that. So, yeah.
Okay. I guess this next question was really for the whole group, not necessarily to you, Paul, but do any apartment dwellers have experience weatherizing their homes? The person asking the question said that their apartment may as well be a sieve. Doors and skylights are a particular problem. So I don't know if anybody wants to answer that question in the chat, or maybe they already have.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity in the chat, so it's hard to see.
One more question, which I thought was a good one. Are there incentives for contractors to get trained and certified in New York State?
Don't know the answer to that question. I know there are programs to certify the contractors, and there's on the NYSERDA websites, they have links for where so if you look at on that contractor page, if you go to that page and you look at the link to the contractors, you can see that NYSERDA also has sites there for contractors. And if you delve into those pages, I think you will find that they have programs, training programs, and other things. But I haven't done that personally, so I can't answer that question. But I think that's where the information would be. The other thing that you can do if you're interested, if you're a contractor and interested in that, is you could also reach out to your clean energy hub. You'll see the links in the resource page in the backup that's being sent out. And the Clean Energy Hub will have answers to questions like that, for sure. And they're organized by region. So for instance, there's one in Manhattan, there's another one in like Brooklyn and Bronx, and then there's one in Queens and Staten Island. So you just put in your county, and then you'll find the link to the individual and how to get in contact with them.
And then if I haven't missed anything, there's one more question, which I think there's some activity in the chat around. The question is, why didn't you cover using green energy other than community solar?
So the other green energy, so you can create clean electricity from wind and from water. And there's also geothermal. Some people consider nuclear nuclear is a non-carbon, but it's not necessarily considered maybe favorable to a lot of people. So all of those are in it. When you look at the New York supply of electricity for the whole state, there's a good chunk of it is hydro and nuclear. And the wind and solar are growing fast, but you can't go out and community solar allows you to go out and buy clean solar. There's no equivalent program that I'm aware of other than an ESCO, where you could go out and get other types of renewable energy. But the problem with those programs, or the downside of those programs, they're good. There's, so don't get me wrong, they provide renewable energy, but you generally pay more than what you would pay the utility for that. Whereas with community solar, you're always guaranteed to get a discount. So you're getting clean renewable energy and a discount. So that's why we talk about community solar or getting your own solar.
Okay, I think we covered all the questions in the chat. And if anybody has additional questions, you can also raise your hand. And I apologize if I missed your question, but we're also at about an hour, so we were planning to move into breakout rooms. Shall we do that now, Paul? Well, there's a question.
Yes, this is Stuart. My question is, as a owner of a condo in a large building, if I do switch to an ESCO or community solar for green, does that help the building's carbon score? I'll be giving a presentation shortly to 310 apartment dwellers on this subject. I'm trying to find out that answer to that question. I appreciate any assistance.
Okay, I'm going to ask Joseph, if he is on the call, if he could answer that question.
Yeah, so I assume you're referring to local law 97. That is going to be incumbent for your building's benchmarking agent to account for the renewable energy that is being utilized within individual dwelling units' electric consumption. Moving forward, local law 97 reporting will need to be certified, stamped, and submitted to the DOB by what's known as a registered design professional. That essentially means someone with the licensing or a company with someone on staff that has either a professional engineering license or is a licensed architect. The DOB states that they will be utilizing the discretion of the registered design professional to quantify the carbon that is being emitted by said building. So it will be incumbent on the benchmarking agent that you are utilizing to account for the renewable energy that is being utilized within each dwelling unit's apartment, as well as the common area. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. I am a account manager with NYC Accelerator, which is a city program that provides free support for building stakeholders within buildings above 5,000 square feet, privately owned, providing free support to take on decarbonization projects and learn about these local laws. So I've just put it in the chat. It's joseph@accelerator.nyc. You can also just go to the NYC Accelerator website, just Google it, and you can get a bunch of great resources, trainings, etc., so that you can, keep up to date with everything that's happening in the New York City climate realm. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
That's great. And Stuart, I recommend you join our next chapter meeting, which will be, Joseph will be presenting, and there'll be a condo president or a member of the condo board who's gone through a lot of the steps on this journey to address the local law 97 challenges. Bryson, I see your hand up.
Thanks again, Paul, for all you offered. I just want to highlight that for folks like me who are renters, and again, sort of like have a split incentive problem where any money you put into any upgrades, you don't return. Demand side programs like time of use, particularly for those who work from home or have a more flexible schedule, are also a really cool way. You mentioned that, Paul, in the presentation, but just want to mention that time of use is a demand side response in terms of using electricity, using it during off-peak hours. The whole point behind that is that we actually are really inefficient with our electricity use, and we have to ramp up electricity during peaking hours. And so the most dispatchable energy is not renewable, it is non-renewable sources like gas. And so if you're able to draw down the peaks, you're able to draw down the use of peaking plants on the grid. So for folks who, like me, it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money in a place you're renting, I think you should really check out the time of use links that were sent so that you have another way to contribute to decarbonization.
That's super. Thank you for that. And I think most of those, I think Con Ed included, will let you have a 2-month period where you test it out and you can go back if it's not working for you. So it's a nice option. Thank you, Bryson. I see Rosa's hand raised. And I think we'll take Rosa's question and maybe one more, and then we'll go to the breakout rooms for anyone who has any specific questions. We're going to break out the rooms in 3 areas. It'll be home, transport, and community solar. Okay, Rosa.
My question is, you mentioned a company, Nick, called Sealed would help install solar panels or the heat pumps, I forgot which. And it seemed like it was the only company that is currently certified to do so. Is that correct?
So, okay, so what's Sealed? The reason why we mentioned this one company, and we as a rule, we never mention any companies in our presentations and in our outreach. The only reason why we mention this one company is that it's endorsed by all of the utilities across the state to provide this service. So they work closely with the utilities. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And what they do is they will either they'll come, actually, I think they don't even come to your house. They look at it online, and then they'll make a decision whether, to put in insulation or heat pumps. And then what they do is they pay for that, that activity and then charge you back for it. That's how they make their money, is by charging you back. And then the idea is that what they're charging you should be less than the savings that you'll get on your electricity bill. And if I were going to do this personally, I would make sure that that is in the contract, that those savings are going to be greater than the or that it's their they're going to have to eat the difference.
Right. Thank you. If the other half of my question then is, are there other companies that will have the same, I guess, accreditation or authority to do so that there's no monopoly and we don't get taken for a ride?
Yes. So on that NYSERDA website, which is there's a page on the deck called Contractors, and you could look on that NYSERDA website there. And they have I think it's by county, a list of approved contractors, whether it's for weatherization or for heat pumps or anything else. So when I looked up, I was doing a project for a town upstate, and it's in Ulster County, and I found 100 suppliers that were certified from them. And then they had, by the way, they have 2 types in there. They have like what's called Gold Star and then just regular ones. So the Gold Star ones were ones that I had recognized as like, pretty outstanding suppliers. So that was helpful.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and Nina. Hi, Nina.
Hi, Paul. Thanks. I came in late, so I missed some of it, but I really appreciated the presentation that I was able to see. And I'm wondering if the slides will all be available with the recording. We'll be able to get the whole recording, including with the links, to be able to get to those links. That's the first question.
The recording will be on our website, so we'll send that out in the newsletter. It'll be on the Reality Hub. You'll see it, and then the Facebook page. So we'll send that out, and then I'm gonna just put this back up for a second. I'm gonna share my screen, and you can take a QR code. You can just capture this, and you'll be.
Yeah, I wanted to scan it, and I have to go back and get my scanner up here.
I've also put the links in the chat, and I can post them again so they're at the bottom of the chat and easily accessible, if that helps.
Yeah, I also have been saving the chats, but if I can see the QR code, then let me,
You see that?
no, I just see the health and something, which came right after the QR code when the QR code disappeared. Okay, there, maybe, yeah, there it is. Okay, let me see if I can get that.
Okay. And then maybe we can move to the breakout rooms, because people everyone here is obviously who's still here now is obviously very dedicated, has some questions they want answered. So I think Deepa, can you open those breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now.
And I'll be in the home breakout room. Deepa will be in the EV breakout room, leading that. And Nikki will be in the community solar breakout room. So, join whichever room is appropriate for your question, and we'll stay there until you're done, until we're done. I know Nikki has a young child, so she's got to get going at some point pretty soon. Great. And I'm going to move over maybe, yeah, I think that's it. We won't see you, so good night, everybody. Good night.
So does anybody need help joining a breakout